as much as we talk about having a lot of Mormonism imprinted into our DNA, I also still have some of that skeptic imprinted in there. Man, that's some triggering stuff for me because it gets into in heaven. You're gonna say, "Oh, I lived during Abraham Lincoln," and the other person's gonna be like, "Oh, I lived during Genghis Khan," and then I lived during Gordon B. Hinckley, Thomas S. Monson, or Russell M. Nelson. And there's going to be a hush that falls over the corridors of heaven. Everybody's going to like bow to you like, oh, this is the toughest time. And it's like, come on, what? Come on.
I love being at that place where I can look back and with more gratitude than bitterness.
Welcome to 5D,
great.
Mike.
Yeah, I am still very much in the 3D when it comes to Mormonism. I don't know. Like, part of me was so triggered by everything you just said, Mike. I was like, nope, nope.
In your soul is understanding. And that understanding is love.
Yeah.
Love for yourself, love for your friends, love for your enemies, love for the things that you don't understand.
Yeah, love your
And I'm experiencing that right now while the three of you are arguing about whether or not we should have been Mormon.
Nope.
What do you guys think?
Well, it reminds me just how you're treating your COVID diagnosis today, Glenn.
Yeah.
In a way, right?
Yeah.
I was kind of like, what am I going to learn from this? This is a teaching moment,
I've had so many internal imaginary conversations with this virus inside of me.
This is Infants on Thrones,
Baby steps.
You want someone to preach to you.
the philosophies of men,
I like magical
You
toys.
want religion, do you?
mingled with humor.
I don't believe in them.
There will be many willing to preach to you the philosophies of men mingled with humor.
We are evolving.
Baby steps.
You can buy anything in this world of money.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone.
Welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and this is episode 151, Infants on COVID, a 5D perspective. And I am beyond thrilled to welcome back the full Mormons on Mushrooms panel of Mike, Shelise, and Doug. Yes, welcome back, Doug. And yes, it is another episode where we play in the sandbox of symbols and stories and fictions that are probably a little different, or maybe very, very different, from the normal symbols and stories and fictions of everyday discourse that we rarely stop to recognize as symbols and stories and fictions because we just think of them as reality, which, when you really stop to think about it, is only experienced and communicated through multiple competing systems of symbols, stories, and fictions. Stop. Take a breath. This is fun, right? Playing with symbols and stories and fictions, all in the service of learning how to become a more kind, compassionate, understanding, accepting, nurturing, joyful, peacemaking human being, human mind. So, today we're going to be talking about a lot of different ways of perceiving reality. Reality. You know, things that really exist as opposed to things that really don't exist. Things that exist in some form of existence as opposed to things that exist in no form of existence. Like thoughts. Like thinking about biting into a lemon, which isn't the same thing as actually biting into a lemon. But they're both real, right? They can both trigger a physical salivation response in your body. They can both make you pucker. They may not be the same kind of real. One may be a thought form, and the other a physical, actual yellow lemon. But even thought forms exist in the real world and can be identified and measured with the right kind of neural equipment. So these are the kinds of questions that we'll be exploring in today's episode. What is real? What is imagination? Is imagination real? Maybe a different kind of reality? What is an egregore? Groupthink? A thought form? Are thought forms real? Are fictions real? Do fictions and groupthink impact anything in the external world? What is the external world? Is humanity and the planet Earth moving from a three-dimensional reality through a fourth-dimensional reality into a fifth-dimensional reality? What does any of that even mean? Are these also just symbols and stories and fictions that represent something else? Is that something else something I should even care about or be aware of? What are dimensions? What are Russian nesting dolls? If I put a single green pea into a small red Tupperware container, and then I put that into a medium yellow Tupperware container, and then I put that into a large blue Tupperware container, is that kind of like the way that my body is made? That all reality is made? With quantum energy being that little green pea inside of atoms that are inside of molecules that are inside of cells, etc., etc. And how in the world could I think that that single green pea of quantum energy is the fundamental building block of everything that is, and that is a field that fills the entire space, so that single green pea is actually every other single green pea inside of every other atom, molecule, and cell. And what are you talking about, Glenn?
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
Yes, I did test positive for COVID, and I have no idea what's in store for me. I have friends who have had it, one in particular, Heather, who you might remember from this podcast, who suffered horrible migraines for months. Others who experienced it as a cold with cold-like symptoms and really nothing more. Some who were rushed into the ICU and put on ventilators. I don't know what's ahead for me, but I'll find out soon enough, won't I? And all of this plays into today's episode. So,
hang on to your hats and glasses, cause this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Start over again. You feel bad, what?
Just, I've been feeling FOMO when you guys record and talk about Palladians, because it's just been, like, each time, I don't know, something was weird going on. I had kids' sports or some kind of thing like that or whatever. But
I just want it to be acknowledged for the record, you were invited.
Oh yeah, of course I was
So
invited.
it was your choice to not join, or maybe the universe got in the way. You wanted to join.
I mean, I wanted to, but choice is an interesting concept with a wife and 3 active children.
Yes. Well, maybe we can make up for it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Tonight. So the first time I recorded with you guys in January, it was the day that I lost my job. And I remember I kind of dropped that on you guys. You're like, oh no. I'm like, don't worry, it's going to be all right. And it was fine. And so I think it's so poetic that today is the day that I find out that I tested positive for COVID, and we already had this thing scheduled. And this is the first time that we're all 4 back that you're joining us, Doug. So it has this really nice synchronicity, especially since the last time Shelise and Mike and I recorded, I think it was about synchronicity. So everything worked out with my job. Everything is going to work out with the COVID stuff. It's just the universe sending me a message, right?
That's right. Is this your first time getting COVID?
Yeah, that I know of.
Yeah, that you know.
I don't think I had it earlier. I tested for it twice previously, and it was negative both times. And so this is third time is the charm.
Third time is the charm.
So Doug, you're the common thread in these two ones.
Yeah, I'm like the harbinger of bad omens, or what?
Yeah.
No, but it's not the bad. It's the bad that actually is okay. Right? Remember?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So you've had COVID, Doug?
Yeah, actually, we're coming up on my exact year anniversary, and I still can't smell shit. Like I have not smelled anything for 1 year.
Shit's the only thing that you can't smell?
I wish I could smell shit. Yeah, I can't smell anything.
Okay.
Including shit.
Yeah.
Have you tried? Don't they have like
sucks,
this
though.
like pickle therapy going on or something? Or you like smell a bunch of, I don't know.
Yeah, like with essential oils and lemon and lime and all that kind of stuff. I've been doing that. It's like smell training is what they call it, but nothing.
Did they have any idea why that happens to some people and not to others? And do you have that for your sense of taste as well?
Well, my taste has been my taste came back about 3 weeks after I got it. But it's deadened and things do taste different. Like coffee is awful to me. I used to really quite like coffee, and now it just can't even stand the taste of it.
Wow.
And then also chocolate. I just can't get behind chocolate. It tastes like dirt to me.
Wow.
Yeah. That's why I'm so slim and trim, because coffee and chocolate are out of my diet now, you know?
Oh, okay. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you, COVID.
Yeah.
I can still taste beer, though.
Praise be.
Cool. Well, I want to call this episode Infants on COVID a 5D perspective.
I'm on board. I love it.
I'm on board.
Does that mean anything to any of you? Like, what would a 5D perspective, like, have you guys heard about the move from 3D to 5D? Has that come across your radar?
Amber talked about it on our episode
Yeah.
with her.
Oh, did she? And when you interviewed her, she talked about that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I've heard it from the Wendy Kennedy stuff that you sent.
Yeah.
And so I'm fascinated to talk about it. I don't know much about it, but it's fascinating to me. And it triggers this thing in me where it's like, is this similar to and maybe we've talked about this on another episode, but is this similar to the millennium that we've been talking about, our whole lives? And, or maybe the millennium was just a precursor to, maybe that's what they were vibing with when, whoever got the download about or revelation, I think is what we called it, right? About in other words, I'm wondering if I'm just falling for the same shit, or if the shit I used to believe was actually a archetype of the same thing we're talking about here. You know what I mean?
If only we had someone here who could sniff out the shit.
Right.
That'd be great.
I still smell shit pretty well.
Do you? Okay.
But
well, then you can tell us.
Lucky duck.
But I'm on board with this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, the Wendy Kennedy stuff, and then like there's that I saw that documentary Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind.
Oh
They
yeah.
talk about the fifth dimension, like astral projection, traveling through space and time to make contact. So when you say that, I could be completely wrong, but that's the kind of thing I start thinking about is contact or the ability to exist in multiple spaces simultaneously, flattening out time.
Yeah. And the way I like to think about that is that it's not the ability to exist in multiple dimensions at the same time, but it's raising your awareness that you already are existing in multiple dimensions at the same time, but we're so focused on the here and now of what's going on that we just kind of ignore it as if that's only science fiction and only fantasy, where you could raise your awareness to experience the reality of it. I think that's the idea behind it, the way that I understand it.
I think we do have limitations though, as far as the human brain and the 3D construct. There's only so much that our brains can actually process, which is why anytime I am experiencing mushrooms or any type of psychedelic, I feel like my brain is unlocked to a higher dimensional place, because I do feel like I have a bird's eye view of a lot of different things that I didn't have the capability of seeing just in a sober state of mind.
Yeah. Cool.
Well,
So
bringing me back to that, sorry, just real quick, you're bringing me back to that solstice thing we talked about, where I remember when I was really tripping on LSD, and we remember that pirate guy we were talking to, Doug? Were you talking to me with the pirate guy or not?
Yeah, dude, I don't know if I should name him, but he had multiple pirate outfits. I told him, I was like, dude, you got too many fucking pirate outfits.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And there was that guy. And there was also, when I was really having a rough time, there was this older woman in like this purple and lavender. I don't know. But with both of those people, I felt like, oh, these guys know the game. They're just traveling. They're traveling through time. they're on there and they're kind of inviting people to their intergalactic space traveling spaceships or whatever, and they're selling away. And right now they're in this time zone right now in this timeline, and I'm like, how do I learn how to do this? But maybe I am already doing it. I'm not aware that I'm doing it, and maybe they're not really aware that they're doing it too. They're physical incarnations now, or maybe they are aware and they know what they're doing. I don't know, but it just brings me back to that memory.
Yeah, the only place I can even try to imagine that is that there are so many things that are going on inside of my body. Like there's so many things that exist inside of my body that they are there, molecules, atoms, like things that they're doing stuff that is me, but I'm not aware of it. But if I can become aware that it's happening, then I can expand my awareness a little bit, even if I'm not experiencing it from the perspective of a molecule. Right?
Yeah, that starts getting funky for me because they are there and it is you. And without all of those individual molecules and atoms doing their own operating supposedly on their own volition, there is no you.
Right.
So what is me? It's like billions of these little things, and who knows what the little part that makes up the idea of me saying I am me or me exists. Fucks with me a lot, man. That's a tough one. I'm glad I'm not high right now.
Cool. Well, so I prepared some clips from Kimber. Shelise mentioned that she and I are in a class that started this last Sunday. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Shelise, just to set it up? Because you've done these classes with Kimber before, right? And this is my first time.
Yeah, it's a mystery school, so it's divine alchemy. It's everything that is, and all of the learn about ascended masters and spirit guides and the dimensions, the densities.
Yes, I'm George McFly. I'm your density.
The densities. You learn about the chakras, how to clear the chakras and how to activate them to be at your full potential, whether that's for manifesting power or just to come into yourself as a complete human being, mind, body, and soul.
And it's just this absolutely gorgeous group of people. Like every single person on that call. And we only had about half of the group there, I think, for the first one. But just everybody is so cool. Like it just was a really nice place to be. And yeah, so
I've got some FOMO right now in that class. That's
I told you guys to join.
Yeah.
I think you did, right? Yeah. Trying to realize why I didn't do it.
Maybe it's not too late. She wanted more men in there anyway. When she first started this class a couple years ago, it was women only because it was like a safer container for us to really, I don't know, speak openly.
Intentionally, it was women only?
Yeah. And I think she just this past year decided to start doing classes with men as well. And so they're slowly trickling in. But I think that's why there's usually way more women than men, because it's the women who've already taken the class and they've come back.
Well, and that's interesting that you asked that question, Glenn, because I was thinking this, maybe I was on the same wave with you of, I think that women seek out that type of intuitive or maybe a little less conventional type of thing. So I was curious too, if it was intentionally women or if it was just women who seek that out a little earlier than men. That's what I've learned from doing this podcast, is that women are often a lot more, I don't know, intentional or magic than men.
Right-brained, heart opened, feeling centered. Like, what are some different words we could use here that women, like that feminine energy?
It's the creator energy.
Yeah.
We're looking to create more and to manifest more. I don't know. I think women are just naturally more open to the idea of stuff like this.
Definitely.
Because you really have to be vulnerable and feel the feels in her class. They usually get pretty intense, or it ends up being like group therapy sometimes.
Well, in this first one was a lot of information. So she was kind of setting the context. And so I pulled a couple of clips. There's only 5 of them in total. It's just over 6 minutes. So we should be able to get through them pretty quickly. But it's similar to what we've done in the past with some of the Wendy Kennedy stuff. And I like the comparison because there's definitely things that Kimber's talking about that, to your earlier point, Mike, does sound very familiar to somebody who's been raised as a Mormon. So let me play the first clip here and then we can talk about it.
We have total amnesia of our past lives, our galactic origins. We forget who we are. We forget our mission. We forget what we came here to do. It's like we're in this complete illusion of linear time and we're unable to experience the higher dimensions. But that's the old world. And some people are still in that deep 3D world, and that's what we're seeing. But as we move into fourth density, fourth and fifth dimensional perspective, this is all changing. So more and more people are waking up and reconnecting to all aspects of themselves, which, some being star seeds, they're coming with their memories intact. And as children, some of us saw angels and light beings. And so we're here to help other people remember that this is a reality, that there's other dimensions, there's other realms of experience out there besides just what you can see with the world of matter. And that world is the world of imagination.
All right. What jumped out to you from that clip? Because there's several things that jumped out to me.
Well, let me just start with the end there with imagination. I was just hesitating whether we start with that because it was the last thing she said, but it's something that's really coming up for me in a lot of ways, in the power of imagination to create our reality, and how imagination plays such a big role in it's something we learn to shut down as children, or after we're children, I guess. In children it's very active, and then at some point it shifts, and we're taught to not have our head in the clouds, and
right.
But if
we're taught that imagination is not reality.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
But when you think of I was even just I've been doing a lot of active imaginations recently, which is a concept that I think James Hillman or Carl Jung taught about, which is you explore your inner world through imagination. And it has a lot of psychological benefits. It's fascinating. You basically go in a meditative state and you kind of go on an inner journey. And dreams are the element of imagination too. It maybe not active, unless you're controlling your dream, or what do they call it? A lucid dream. But if it's not a lucid dream, your subconscious is imagining it. And so, that imagination, you're imagining the energy inside of you in imaginal form in a way. And so that's very real, it's taking on these images and the power that the imagination has to tap into those images. I was even reading in part of this book where it talks about, talking about the chakras that Shelise was mentioning, envisioning an animal for each one of your chakras. And then that animal becomes your companion, and it's someone you can talk to when you need more confidence. And so you talk to your sacral chakra animal, whatever that is. And people will be saying, oh, you're going crazy, you're talking to imaginary animals. Well, if it helps you access your courage and your power, and that animal is something that your subconscious imagined, there's just a power to it. And so it's fascinating that it's been hard for me as I've been trying to tap back into my imagination. It's a new skill that I'm trying to hone, and it gets kind of hard sometimes, and it gets frustrating because, I get caught in my head. Oh, am I just imagining it? Am I not? Or am I doing it right? Am I not? And the point is to just keep trying. I don't know, but that stuck out to me that she said that.
Yeah. For me, I immediately went into some of that. I don't know. I still have, as much as we talk about having a lot of Mormonism imprinted into our DNA, I also still have some of that skeptic imprinted in there. And it's always interesting because like anytime someone's talking about these beings or these entities that some of us can see, I start getting into like, well, okay, why some of us? Like what, I start getting into the same thing of why did Joseph Smith see God and Jesus, and why we have a little bit more confirmation or clarity or something like that. But then the more I listened to her, I was like, but gosh, it's like there are times when I've been in an altered state when I'm very clearly interacting with otherworldly entities or other dimensional entities. And so I think that there are people who hone this skill and then are able to learn from it and be a little bit more intentional with how they get into those communications and into interacting with those beings. And I just, I don't know. I guess the skeptic comes in first, and then the other part of me says, well, you've experienced some of this stuff. But a lot of times I'm required to have tools or medicines or whatever we want to call those entheogens to help me communicate with that. So that's kind of what first jumped up for me.
Do you feel like when you've had those interactions with those beings in an altered state, that is anything other than your imagination? Like, would it reduce the like the significance of that experience if I said, oh, you were just imagining that, Doug? Those weren't real. They were imagination.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with those being imagination, because they're things that if I were to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to imagination right now, the experiences that I've had have been beyond what I think that I could normally explore in my imagination. So I'm okay with whatever we're calling real versus imagination. I'm okay with those entities existing in my imagination only. But even to say in my imagination only gets into those places of, well, what does that mean? Like, what does that even,
right?
What does that even mean? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about that. I do think there is at least a possibility for separation between imagination and something outside of yourself. If we ignore the whole we're all connected thing, I do think
if we ignore the we are all connected thing,
there are other beings and entities that are like trying to connect with us beyond the scope of our imagination. Yeah. I mean, I could say that firsthand based on some of my experiences. So like people question my past life regressions and they're like, well, maybe you just made that up. I'm like, okay, well, if I made it up, how did I conjure the name of the exact place with the exact people married to the exact person in the exact time period that actually exist? And I had no idea that was a real place. So like, there's that. And also, I was actually touched by an angel once when I was a kid. And I know I wasn't imagining that because I could have been seriously hurt, but I was like saved by this, whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Girl, bury the lead. Why don't you tell us more?
Yeah, right. I can't believe it's only now that we're hearing this story.
Yeah.
I've kept it in my pocket. Happy to talk about it on our side as well. But yeah, I want to say 4 or 5 years old. And my dad had just built these really cool bunk beds for me and my brothers. And my brother had one that was a little bit higher than mine because I was so little. And my grandma was over, and me just trying to get attention because no one paid attention to me as a kid. was like, look, grandma, look how I can climb the ladder. And so I climb up to the top, and she's talking to my mom, and no one's paying attention to me. And so they like keep chatting and they walk out of the room. And I was like, waiting for them to come back, and then they didn't, and I got nervous. I was like, wait for me. And so I was trying to climb down really fast, and my foot skipped a rung, and so I started falling backwards, and I like closed my eyes really tight waiting to hit the ground, and I didn't. I was just like suspended like a plank and I didn't feel hands. I didn't feel like someone caught me and it was that kind of gravitational pull. I just was floating for maybe 5 seconds and then slowly put down on the ground. And I opened my eyes like, who goes there? And no one was there. And so I've remembered that for a very, very, very long time. And I always was mad at myself. I'm like, why didn't I open my eyes? I could have seen who it was that saved me.
Yeah. That's an awesome experience. It reminds me, my cousin told me a story. His grandfather on the other side of the family, not the one that we shared, had passed away, and he was driving down from Utah to Arizona to go to the funeral, and he fell asleep at the wheel. And when he woke up, like, it'd only been out for a couple of minutes, but when he woke up, his arms were down at his side, but he looked and he saw hands on the steering wheel, and he said those were Grandpa's hands.
Whoa.
So I've heard stories like that before too, Shelise. And so to your point that there's things that are outside of just your own imagination, like you've had experience with that. I think one of the areas where we can get tripped up is just the word imagination. Like, what is it? When we're talking about something that's imagined, what are we really talking about? Like, what physically, biologically is something that you're imagining? And I think if you break it down to the fundamental biology of what it is and the neurology of what it is, it's a neural pathway, just like what you're seeing, just like what you're hearing, just like when you're moving, just like everything that we do is all these neural pathways that are. So I have this very broad interpretation and definition of imagination, that it's anything that our brain is creating, and everything that we experience is something that our brain is creating. And it's like filtering the world that is outside of us, but it's being rendered by our brain inside of us. And so I think everything is kind of an imagined experience from that perspective, because our brain creates it. Does that make sense? That's how I see it.
Yeah. And I think there's that element of like, well, Shelise, you were saying, something outside of us too, like tapping into other entities. But I think there's an element of it's almost like, is it maybe, and maybe this is where it'd be great to have Kimber on here too, but is it the same muscle almost that you're exercising? So like when you think of you're imagining, so if Kimber's channeling or Wendy Kennedy's channeling the ninth dimensional Palladians, in her mind, she's kind of using her imagination, but her imagination is what's allowing her to connect with that other vibration and that frequency, or it's coming from her subconscious, which, at least you're saying we're all one, we're all connected. It's the same subconscious that is connected to the ninth dimensional beings and to each other. And so in using that link we have to source or God or whatever we want to call it, the subconscious, it's through imagination that's accessed.
Yeah, that's kind of how I think of it, Mike. Go ahead, Shelise.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, if we really want to get specific with it, I think that's really all that it is. If we are all connected and we're accessing our imagination, we're really just accessing a different part of our imagination through this channel. And that's really, that's why they call them channelers or mediums or psychics, because they are channeling this information that may or may not be connected to everyone and everything, just like a global consciousness or a universal consciousness. So maybe everything is just pure imagination. Maybe imagination and consciousness are one and the same. I don't know.
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Glenn.
No, you.
Well, so maybe this is for everyone, but I was going to respond to Shelise, but so you tonight, like, what is it possible that you could go into a meditative state and do some active imagination? And could you, imagination is basically creation, right? Whether manifested in some kind of physical realm or just in your imagination. But could you imagine a being or a person who gains awareness or consciousness, and a consciousness that is wholly separate from your consciousness or your life experience? And then could you do that multiple times? And then imagination exercise are gaining a wholly separate consciousness. What I mean, what are
you talking about birthing a new creature out of your own imagination? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, kids do it all the time with imaginary friends and stuff like that,
But then has a separate existence outside of you fueling it with your imagination.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So kind of like an American Gods type.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So that question was to Shelise.
Well, I think it was to the group. It was just sort of inspired by what Shelise was just saying.
Have you ever heard of an egregore?
No. You
just described an egregore. But egregore is this concept. I did an interview with Phoenix Aurelius, I think last October, November. He's an alchemist in Utah. And he told me about these egregores. And so I went and I got a book and I listened to it on egregores. And it's this really interesting idea that there are these entities. It reminded me of American Gods that are like belief systems that people like somebody who's trapped in victim mentality and groups of people that are trapped in this victim mentality. They all share the same kind of narrative. It takes on a life of its own. And it becomes its own egregore, this own kind of thing. And that there's an energy to it that exists in the astral realm. And it becomes like, I don't know, like an evil spirit or something like that. There's a book. I'll see if I can find it on my Audible and share you.
Or maybe even a deadly virus.
Oh, so we're bringing it back to COVID, are we?
Shit,
Tell me, what are your thoughts on that, Mike?
So maybe it's just a collective people, the collective projecting out their fear into a virus. Instead of holding on to our fear, we projected it out, and now it's mutated and it's become a physical manifestation of our repressed fear. And now it's attacking you, Glenn. I'm sorry.
Well, I think so. I looked up the book. It's called Egregores by Mark Stavish and James Wasserman. Really interesting concepts and idea. It's an ancient idea of egregores. But I think if you're talking about COVID, there's different people have different takes on what it is and how effective it is. And maybe there's something about the way that somebody's mindset is that would determine how it impacts them or affects them. I don't know if it would or not, but I think that's what somebody who is talking about egregores would say, that there's maybe multiple egregores that are competing for the way that people will react and respond to this virus that exists out in the world.
Kimber does talk about ascended masters just being basically thought forms, because they turn into mythology and then people still pray to them, like Ganesh, for example, or Lakshmi or Jesus or Buddha. And the more people put their energy and attention to it, the bigger it grows. So maybe, that's kind of parallel to that, it having its own entity in a way based on how many people are giving so much thought and energy toward it.
Yeah.
Now we're back on American Gods. That's
right.
You just described the plot, Shelise.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I need to check that out, because Doug, this reminds me, have I talked about that mushroom trip before on our podcast or this one? Where I actually have a recording of it where I went on a rant with my mate. She was sit tripping for me, and she comes in and I was like, babe, I had this thing of like, it was a Mormon one, and how the collective, if you have a few million Mormons or a few million active Mormons, and they're all putting their energy into an entity, it becomes its own entity out there.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that if you're President Nelson or someone, you can tap into that energy and be like, okay, how do I support you? How do we grow you? And they say, well, the entity says, well, missionaries need to like go out at 18 now. We need to control the youth a little bit more. Right. And so to them, maybe they're receiving revelation. It's just who you're receiving revelation from and what source you're tapping into. And so if you're tapping into this collective egregore, if it's similar, I don't know, then maybe you're getting whatever that vibration is.
Different information,
Different information.
different
Mike,
perspective.
you got to read American Gods by Neil Gaiman, dude. I know you well enough to know that book will really be up your alley. I mean, you'll learn apologies about, Odin and Ever and Isis. And I mean, check it out.
It's a cool
I
book.
listened to it, and Neil Gaiman reads it, and it's amazing.
So I do it before or after Dune?
Neil, do you know Dune? Or Neil. I said Neil because I was thinking of Neil Gaiman. Glenn, do you know Dune?
I don't mind being mistaken for Neil Gaiman. That's a first. That's cool.
Compliment.
That is a compliment. I don't, but I'm looking forward to the movie that's coming out. But I haven't read the books or anything. But I know that people love it and hated the first movie that came out. But yeah, so I've seen the trailers for the new one, and they've intrigued me about it. So are you a Dune apologist, and you're gonna like tell me just that the movie's gonna suck no matter what it is? I need to read the book.
Well, Dune was next on my reading list because of Doug. That's what I'm saying. But
yeah,
so now I don't know if I should bump it to number 2. Which one?
Do American Gods first. Dune. So I read Dune when I was first like 14 years old and didn't understand a lick of it. And then I read it again when I got back from my mission and loved it, and went back and went to like Great American Video or Blockbuster Video and rented the old 80s movie. And it's just awful. Like
that's what I heard.
Movie's awful.
Yeah.
But I am excited. I'm not an apologist. I do have a lot of hope for the new movie coming out, just because I think they're going to make it multiple movies, and it's something
tell the story better than the first attempt. Yeah.
It's something that really does play well to be drawn. I mean, they could do it as an HBO series, and that would be probably the best way to do it. But I believe in Denis Villeneuve, or however the hell you say that guy's name. So,
all right, I mean, I'll use one of my compiled Audible credits on Dune.
I can't wait to talk to y'all about Dune. I fucking love that.
I'll do it. All right. So I just want to sum up the first clip. It's all about imagination. There was one part of it at the beginning that we didn't really touch on, that she talked about the importance of remembering all of the aspects of ourselves. So there's people that are waking up to all the aspects of themselves, and that can mean a lot of things. Because like all aspects of yourself, what do you mean? One of the things I really like about that is the embracing we kind of joked about the shadow parts at the beginning of this call. Like, instead of wanting to hide from these horrible things that are and that happen, or ignore them or bury them or whatever, you embrace them and accept them. And I think that's a big part of healing in the Carl Jung sense of being whole, embracing that wholeness. So I really like that part of what she said too. All right, you ready for the next clip?
So Earth is part of our consciousness. She's a living, breathing entity spinning through space. She has her own consciousness. And like we talked about, she's in her ascension process. She's already moved to 4D. And that's why we're seeing so much polarity in the planet. But all beings on the planet are part of her body. So you're part of her body. You are like one cell on top of the earth, moving and evolving with her. We're not separate from her. Does that make sense?
All right. What do you guys think of that idea about the earth being a living creature and people being like cells on the earth?
My first thought is just really sad because we're killing her. Humans are killing Mother Earth. And if you would have asked me this 3 years ago, I would have been like, Kimber, I don't know about this. But having experienced spirits of plants that I've consumed, I have a different perspective of consciousness and what it means to be, quote, alive. I don't think you have to have a heartbeat in order to have some sort of intelligence or consciousness behind you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could get on board with Earth being a living, breathing thing and us being part of her, because of course we're all born of basically like the dust of the earth, and we turn into dust of the earth when we die. And it all makes sense that our bodies would be a living, breathing organism connected to the earth, and our souls are just the ones that drop in to experience it.
Drop in from where?
From other dimensions.
But
Other times.
are we still pretending that it's not all just one?
Well, no, I don't. I think we're all connected as a consciousness in some way, but I definitely still believe that there are other places than Earth.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So did she say the Earth has already ascended to 4D?
Yeah.
It's in the process. Yeah.
So is it in the process or is it already ascended? I guess that's where I'm confused.
Oh, I thought she said in the process, but I could be wrong.
I thought she said like we're in the process, but the Earth has already ascended to it.
Oh, you're right. She did say that.
I think so.
I don't know what that means. I was just clarifying.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this, Doug?
Well, I think Glenn, you started talking about it when we first jumped on. Your body is a culmination or a collection of a bunch of living cells that are separate but part of you. Analogy for the Earth. I mean, the Earth is a living entity, and the proof is that everything on the Earth is a living entity, and we are just a collection of those living, breathing cells that make up the Earth. I mean, Shelise mentioned that we're killing the Earth, but probably not. We're probably more like a virus that can be. I mean, the Earth has gone through multiple extinction events, is fine, and will be fine long after humans or whatever this version of humans is. But I fully believe that we are simply apples on the way that we as humans are the fruit of the earth, the way that apples are to an apple tree. I say that a lot, but I believe that's what we are.
Is that an Alan Watts poll?
I think that's a Doug poll. Oh, last name. Sorry.
Oh, do you not do your last name on this?
I don't do my last name for anonymity reasons, but yeah. So
you want me to edit
if there's
that
any
out?
way we can pull that little part, yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, do you listen to Alan Watts?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was a like one of the big influences of Alan Watts changing my view of things. And it's kind of why I was teasing you a little bit, Shelise, about like drop in from where, because Alan Watts talks about like our common way of speaking is that we came to this earth, or we came down to the, or like we're coming to it from somewhere else. He's like, no, we grew out of it, like an apple grows out of a tree, kind of thing. So that's why I was playing around with that.
So it is an element.
I would argue that that's not the case, though.
You can.
That me.
Yeah.
I would argue that our body came out of the earth, but our soul didn't come out of the bottom of the earth or the center of the earth.
Yeah. How do you view what a soul is?
A soul, I think, is just pure consciousness or a different vibrational field of energy that's separate from our body in a way. Because if it weren't separate, then when our body dies, we would die. Right?
Say that again. When our body dies, we would die?
If our souls weren't separate from our body, then when our bodies died, we would also perish. We would cease to exist. If they were
the soul would,
and if they were inseparable, right? So I believe that they're separate.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, so I'll just clarify with that. The way that I like to think about a soul is more like the quantum energy that's in like down in every cell and every molecule and every atom that makes that up. Like there's this energy that animates everything, that the energy does something and becomes hydrogen or oxygen. You put two hydrogens and one oxygen together, you get a water molecule. You put that with some carbon and you get, other things. And that's the soul, and that's the spirit, is that energy that underlies everything, that isn't separate, but it's organized in a way that creates this sense of separation and this illusion of separation, so that when the physical body dissolves, that energy that makes it up still exists and is still part of like the fabric matrix of everything that exists. That's the way that I envision it, but I don't know what it is. But I like this idea of Earth being alive, and we're we're things that have grown out of it. We are the earth. Like an apple is the tree that it grew out of, and it has the seeds inside of it that then are going to create that cycle over and over and over again. That we are the earth. And that's what I heard her saying. We're not separate from it. And the damage or the danger that we're doing to it can be countered. And I think is in the next clip, she talks about that a little bit.
Well, and I love that idea too, because, ever since, Doug, like when I get on mushrooms, I love to touch a good tree. And even not on mushrooms. I mean, I see a tree and kind of like, you just feel the energy of the tree for a bit. And even, I think it was we had a Mormons on Mushrooms share circle this Sunday. That was a really cool deal, but or was it that or the meditation? One of the two. Someone was talking about meditating and was talking about chi and the chi energy. And I tried it afterwards and it was meditating and like just feeling the earth and the earth's energy. And my arms were like buzzing afterwards. And I don't know, that could all be my imagination, whatever. Or it could be my imagination, that's also tapping into the earth's energy. And whatever it is, I love that idea. And thinking of the earth as a living being, it just resonates with me so much now, and so much more now than it did before, I took mushrooms.
Like if you think about the rainforest and all of the different types of life that are in that rainforest and that make it what it is and then contribute to creating a bunch of oxygen on the planet. But it's all of those, like every little insect, every little plant, every little mushroom, all of those things that are interacting together to create this thing. And that's kind of like what we've got going on inside of our bodies. Like we've got all these bacteria and viruses and cells and molecules, all these things that are creating this. It's what the planet's doing. It's what we are as part of it. And this is another idea that came from Alan Watts, but it just really rocked my world. This idea that the earth is growing an external brain, that humans are like the cells that we're part of, that we're almost like neurons that are relaying information and seeing how we're creating the like with our telecommunications, creating this neural network where we're connecting in ways that we never have before. I see this really huge potential that humanity has to create a connection, like a conscious connection that underlies the unconscious connection that's been working behind the scenes the whole time. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Like there's this deep inner intelligence inside of our bodies that we're not even consciously aware of. And it's kind of like pushing us and driving us, and we're recreating that into consciousness. Anyway, I get excited and geeked out about these kinds of things, even when I have COVID.
I'm with y'all. Like, I'm somewhere in the space where I agree with Shelise and Glenn at the same time.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I don't know what we call a soul or what we call awareness or conscious. I don't know what that is. I feel like there's a deep wisdom in the earth. I feel like there's, Mike, you and I've talked about it. I feel like there's a wisdom in the trees. And Glenn, not just the rainforest, sorry, my dog, but but the rainforest, like it's breathing. Like when we're getting into that, we can watch it. Shit, I got to mute for a second.
I love your dog. Don't you dare mute him.
All right.
Let his bark echo across the internet.
I mean, he's reacting to something, you know what I mean? So there's some kind of weird I don't know. But speaking of energy, I do have a story about like feeling and seeing energy in a very real way. When I was a missionary, I spent time with a guy who was a Kung Fu master. I was in Taiwan, Glenn, just for your info. So I was in Taiwan.
Love it.
This dude, Guo Qiliang, was a Kung Fu master. And as a young, 20-year-old missionary, I was like, what's up with this chi? Chi is a big thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, chi is just energy.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I can show you. And so he put his hand like this against the small of my back and gave me like a punch to my lower back, my kidney. And yeah, I could feel that. Like that's flesh hitting flesh. I could really feel that. And he's like, and here's what it would feel like if I was moving the energy. And he did the same thing. And he stopped short of touching, like, so he's going like this with his hand, and he stops short of touching my flesh, my skin. And I feel this is maybe imagination, maybe me wanting to believe something or whatever you want to call it, but I felt a bolt go from the small of my back all the way to the other side, where like on my lower belly and stuff like that. And that rocked my world as a 20-year-old Mormon missionary. I was like, what the fuck was that?
Did you think it was the devil?
Yeah, I did. I thought he was possessed by the devil. I was like ready to cast it out, That's a real deal. Holy smokes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, next clip from Kimber.
So like you've gone through your dark nights of the soul. If you're in this class, I'm sure you've gone through the collapsing of everything, the dark night of the soul. It's the river of change. When we go through the dark night of the soul, you're on one side of the river. You go into the river takes away everything you thought you knew, relationships, jobs, belief structures, and you're left in that river of change of this darkness. But what the river of change does is really get you connected to your higher self. It gets you connected to the divine. It gets you connected to who you truly are. It takes away all those outside noises. And then when you come out of the river of change is your new life. And so Earth is actually going through the river of change right now. She's going through her dark night of the soul. We're in a collective dark night of the soul right now, right?
When I listened to that, I thought anybody who listens to Infants on Thrones or Mormons on Mushrooms has experienced some kind of faith crisis, some kind of dark night of the soul, and can, whether you've lost jobs and gotten COVID or divorces or like any other things, going through these changes and transitions, you can see, okay, that there is a role that it played in me becoming who I am. She talked about it as these struggles that help you find out who you truly are. And I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think that means? Like, do you think that struggles connect you to who you really are? And if so, how does that happen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want me to start? I'll start.
Yeah. Yes.
I can just speak from my own experience. So my dark night of the soul was uncovering memories of childhood abuse.
Yeah.
And then getting the confirmation from the abuser. And then breaking up with my boyfriend, and then moving into a house with a guy that was extremely controlling. It was just a renter situation. But then he gave me a 12-hour notice to move out, and then I was homeless for 2 weeks. All of this happened within a span of like 2 months. So that was definitely the dark night of the soul for me. And that's when I asked the universe for help. I was like, okay, I'm ready. Bring on the therapist. Let's do this. So that's when I met Kimber. And that's when I met other healers and started on this path of self-discovery. And I think the reason why you find yourself at the darkest time is because all of the other layers are forced to peel away. And you're forced to look at yourself in the mirror in a way that you haven't before. And you're forced to ask yourself the difficult questions and face all of the different mirrors of your life that you've been avoiding or you just haven't seen before.
Yeah.
It leaves you with a really raw version of yourself when you're just there alone, whether you're crying or just sitting at home. It's just very humbling to sit there with yourself and to really decide where you want to go from there. And I think that's why it's so powerful, is because the only way you can go is up or anywhere that you want, literally anywhere after that. You kind of rewrite your life and decide which direction you want it to go instead of being stuck in old patterns or an old job or an old relationship, whatever it is. It's just very liberating in a way.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. Like every time I've had one of those things crumble away, like losing a job or getting divorced or leaving the Mormon church, there was something about that I was terrified of. I was terrified, oh, if my marriage ends, I'm just going to be ruined. If my job, I'm never going to make money again. If I leave the church, I'm never going to make it to the celestial kingdom. Like whatever. I feel like going through that experience and seeing, oh, I was actually okay. It actually all works out. That's where a lot of that liberation takes place for me, is because I'm okay. So what are these other things then that I might be afraid of that I actually don't really need to be afraid of? And just like going through that crucible, those dark nights of the soul, they keep coming. I keep having experiences like that, but each time one comes up, it's like, okay, all right, there's going to be something on the other side of this that I can make it. And yeah, that's been my experience with it.
So I respond to that in a real positive way. Maybe I'm asking the three of you, do you feel like because of your current okayness or your present level of like, oh, things are fine, and then this dark trials and tribulations that we go through, that they, trying to say this, but they lose some kind of weight with me. And the things that Shelise, you talked about, and then Glenn, that you talked about, a lot of the stuff I have not gone through. I have gone through leaving the church. I have gone through heartbreak. I have gone through thinking I was going to lose a child. But as I think about it right now, because of my current state of, I almost feel a sense of shame is not the right word, but almost like embarrassment for myself of how seriously I took it in that moment in my memory. I think about it was, or how I thought, oh, things are never going to be okay again, because in the moment you're going through that darkness, you're going through that pain. And I guess I get into this like death by comparison, or this like, I compare Glenn, your trials, Mike, your trials, Shelise, your trials. And I also compare my current right now totally fineness with my past or my historical memory trials. And I'm like, it's just not ever been that bad. Like, why was I taking it so seriously? So I get in my own head about these kinds of things. I'm curious if that's something that you experience, or if that's just me being arrogant.
No, I think it's a part of the process, Doug.
Yeah,
that's how I see it. And it's fascinating. This is coming up again. I just had lunch with a kind of a magical human yesterday for lunch, and he's actually going to be a guest on our podcast coming up sometime. But he's an ex-Mormon, but specializes in helping people through transitions, whether it be a divorce or a loss of faith, or you're becoming an empty nester now, or switching careers. And so, Doug, when you say that, yeah, with every, it's funny how I do this with my therapist a lot, where we reflect back on like the last year and be like, remember all those things you were worried about, and how the ego is so bad at predicting. Well, the thing is, the ego is going to keep dying these little deaths. And every time I'm going to be wrapped up in it again and think, oh, I can't possibly get through this one. Can't possibly. So there is an element of, we're going to get caught up in those same cycles. The more you go through them and the more you see them, I think the more you can, at least in those spaces, be like, okay, I know this feels impermanent, or this feels hopeless. I know that's what it feels like right now, but I know tomorrow can be different. I know this is a wave that will pass. But even just saying that to yourself, it's almost just like a faith that it will, or a hope that it will, but you're still going through the tunnel. So it still feels hopeless at the time. And so I don't think there's any way around that, And so when I have my next, tower moment, where, the tower in tarot is when like things change and everything comes crumbling down, I'm going to be going through the same thing, and the same, like, oh, I can't, this is the one that's going to get me, but when she called it the river, what'd she call it? The river of
change, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Change. Yeah. There's an element to, because like when, for example, when I left the Mormon church, it wasn't just the Mormon church that I was grieving. I was grieving this sense that a sense of security in having all the right answers, a sense of superiority in that I was on a special mission, a sense in just thinking that for example, my wife and I, we're now married for eternity. We know where we're going to go in the afterlife, the sense of like false security. And so when you grieve that, it wasn't just grieving the church, it's grieving that my ego now doesn't attach to like security in the same way it did. It's been changed. And now it's tried other things. But so in other words, as whatever the grief is, whether it's a loss of a loved one or, a job transition, divorce, loss of religion, each of those shifts and those changes that you grieve are shifting your ego. And I guess Kimber might even say kind of like you're dropping those lower vibrational frequencies, you're letting those go. And now you're a little lighter and you can resonate at a higher frequency more often because you're letting that go. And that's kind of how I see it. And it's just fascinating this coming up now, especially since even we released today on Mormons on Mushrooms, that episode on death and grieving with Leanne. And we talk a lot about just like fully feeling and fully grieving when a death comes, whether it's an actual like death of a loved one or a mini death that you suffer every day. We kind of go through a mini death.
I think that's interesting, Mike, that you're talking about the safety net or the false sense of security that we have as Mormons, because then I thought, oh, right, it is an identity loss and it is a faith crisis, but also you're losing your safety net. And that's what's so scary about it. And then I thought, okay, well, what do we replace the safety net with? Like where we are now. And then I think there isn't one because it's just possibility. We replace the known with 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 possibility, which is so much more exciting anyway.
I love that.
But it's unknown, right?
Right.
Uh-huh.
All right. Next clip from Kimber.
The way I see it is like in the 1940s, Earth put out a call because when the atomic bomb went off, it created a ripple. It was so intense. It created a ripple through the cosmos. It actually fractured so many souls that were engaged in that energy. And we've been trying to clean up that energy. And with these bombs, Earth is like, Mayday, Mayday. These humans are causing a lot of distortions. They're going to destroy me and destroy this living library of light. And so when Earth put out the call, a lot of us raised our hands and were like, we were done with the third density experience. We were done with Earth already. We had graduated. And then with that call, we're like, I'll go down and I'll help Earth because I love her so much. And we spiral our consciousness down. We go through the veil of forgetting. We go through the zone of choice and we come back here to third density. And a lot of us get here and go, oh shit, what the hell have I done?
All right.
Oh, man, that's some triggering stuff for me because it gets into send me in the council of heaven when God's trying to figure out everybody to go down, all these intelligences, and it's like, okay, well,
all the noble and great ones.
Yeah, I get really feeling like a noble and great one because it's like, every generation is like, oh, in heaven you're going to say, oh, I lived during, Abraham Lincoln, and the other person going to be like, oh, I lived, during Genghis Khan, and then I lived during Gordon B. Hinckley, or Thomas S. Monson, or Russell M. Nelson. And there's going to be a hush that falls over the corridors of heaven. Everybody's going to like bow to you like, oh, this is the toughest time. And it's like, come on, what?
Uh-huh.
So I am ready to retool the phrasing that she used and embrace it. I'm ready for it, but I need your help. I need the three of you to help me on this because it's very triggering to me because I do not like the idea of being like, yo, I'm from the called and chosen and elect and noble and great ones. I get nervous about that kind of stuff.
It brings back those Saturday's Warriors vibe, right?
Saturday's Warrior. It's
right.
everything I was ever in. It's every gospel doctrine, or excuse me, Sunday school lesson I was ever in. It's like, you guys are like pretty chosen. Like, you're pretty darn cool. And it's like, are we just beating each other off here? Like, what is going on?
That's what I was saying in the beginning, whether this is like, like Saturday's Warrior, like, who are these children coming down? Is that something that I'm now just attaching to a new narrative of that because I like that one so much? Or was, the writers of Saturday's Warrior, they were tapping into this sense of, I'm here for a mission. At the time, they thought that mission was Mormonism, and maybe that was part of it, part of this whole, maybe Mormonism was part of this whole awakening journey, and they were playing their role in that, and they were remembering it, and I don't know.
Well, in Kimber's defense now, I really wish I would have followed my instinct and added another clip to this mix, because she made a point when she was defining like star seeds and wanderers and these different terms, and she's made a point of saying, now, a lot of people out there will go into spiritual ego about this kind of stuff. And that's exactly what you were just describing and what you have that knee-jerk reaction against, Doug. And I share that with you as well. And she's like, anybody who's doing that, they're missing the point.
Another thing I like to really point out that, you see a lot of things like on Instagram or TikTok, and it's like, oh, I'm a Palladian being, and it's like, a starseed is highly evolved and doesn't brag about being a starseed. It just is. It doesn't become a new ego construct. It doesn't become like a new version of themselves that they're projecting as an egoic veil. Does that make sense? So it's easy to fall into those ego traps, but remembering a truly advanced being really tries not to fall into those ego traps. And I think we've got the human ego, but one of the most dangerous egos is the spiritual ego, because it's very elusive. You don't know you're in a spiritual ego until it's too late. And then you're like, oh, geez, crap, oops. And then you pull it back and you don't fall into those ego traps. You just remembering you came to experience Earth.
And she's like, anybody who's doing that, they're missing the point. People that really are highly evolved aren't in it for the glory. They're not bragging about it. So maybe if So she did make that point. So as far as Kimber is concerned, she's anti spiritual ego. so
definitely
defense on that.
Like that.
She said something very similar to that when we recorded with her, and then it was a little triggering for me, and I kind of got into this thing. I think the problem is I need to reclaim a little bit of that and understand that it's not about taking the glory of that, of yes, I am the chosen one, I am the chosen elect. It's just it speaks to my own insecurities of,
I'm so glad you said that.
I don't want to be chosen. There's nothing special about me. When Kimber says it, I'm like, yeah, girl, there is something very special about you. I mean, she is enlightened and glows, but it comes down to me getting in that imposter syndrome and that insecurity thing of like, don't include me in that sentence. Cause I thought that at one point and I got really, I really hated myself about that. And I don't want to go back down that path.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between like the form and the function. So like the story that is being told and then the way that you're using that story. And if you're using that story to lift yourself up, to make yourself better than other people, I think that's what you're having a hard time with. And you associate that function with the story itself. So now anytime you hear any story that is even similar to that story, you just have this knee-jerk reaction to it. But you could adopt that story and have a different function, have it be something where you're not really lifting yourself up. You're seeing, oh, this is a way, what this is saying, if I identify as one of these starseed people, that means that I do have the ability to use my imagination to create the kind of healing that when I go through a dark night of the soul, I can see the hidden gifts. I can see the benefits, not just for myself, but for other people. And I can be very compassionate and I can be very loving. And I'm not making it about me. I'm making it about them. And I can do that with my imagination in a way that I'm very dexterous with my imagination. And I can tell a story this way to make somebody feel better about themselves or something like that. I don't know. What do you think about that, Doug?
Yeah, well said. I'll have to sit with that.
Me too. I don't even know what I just said. I'll have to go back and listen to it. No
Okay, but
idea if I mean that or not.
I got something here.
Right.
I got something here. I think this is the difference. This is how I see it. The whole up on your high horse, spiritually chosen in Mormonism, I think the difference is you're special because you're part of the one true church on the planet. And you accepted the church and you are going to the highest kingdom of heaven because of that church. That's the only reason you're chosen and special, not because of you as a soul, because of your own unique abilities to help people or to just be a light to those around you. And being like a starseed or someone that chose to help the ascension of the planet, like Kimber said, you're special because of you, because of your own energetic signature, not because of who you belong to, not because of where you were raised, not because of the religion that you are, or even your beliefs, just because your vibrational signature is special and it creates a ripple effect. And so I think as Mormons, we're taught to believe that we're not uniquely special souls. We're just blessed because we were born into the right church, or we're just righteous enough to be in the most right church. I don't know. I think it's different because it's like religious hierarchy versus just thinking of yourself as a soul being so awesome. And we're told that we don't be vain, be humble. And we're constantly told not to listen to our intuition. I mean, follow the Holy Ghost if it's what we tell you is right, then you're hearing the Holy Ghost. And if it's not what we tell you is right, then it's Satan. So there's no trust in yourself. There is no giving yourself this boost of, yeah, I'm a freaking awesome soul. I'm great. And I help those around me. It's very tied to the religion itself.
Ooh, I love that, Shelise.
So do I.
I was even thinking of it in terms of, the divisiveness that comes, or the, white colonialism that we talk about with like Mormonism and more missionary work and stuff. But this instead becomes more of what we were talking about, like all of humanity is in this together and we should all bring our own unique gifts to it. And it doesn't matter what religion you were born in or what religion you want to go into now, we're all in it together. And not only just humanity, but it becomes, I think we mentioned this on one of our episodes, interspecies collaboration. Yeah. Like we're collaborating with all the species of the earth and the Pleiadians itself. And Pleiadians. Yeah. And the beings from other, it's like, we're all in this together here. And that has a different vibe to it. And I love that. And it's also a vibe of embracing your own unique you and your own unique gifts and leaning into those more and being willing to just like, let your freak flag fly. I can never say that without tripping up my words. I try to.
But another thing that Kimber says is sometimes your mission is just to come down and stop. I mean, I don't know if you have this clip on here, Glenn, or not, just to stop the bloodlines, the negative patterning in the bloodlines. So to stop abuse, to stop alcoholism. So it may not be that you have this big mission to like save all the kids in a third world country, but maybe your mission is just to come down and stop these negative patterns so that eventually when more kids are born, they're born into more love and more joy and less suffering. And she said that's another way that we're helping heal the planet, is just by coming down and volunteering to have these difficult childhoods or difficult lives for whatever reason, to end the patterns that were in your family before you.
Yeah. And I think this is another example of that egregore idea that we talked about earlier, because that it's that egregore of being on your high horse and thinking that you're so much better than other people that is so disgusting. And it doesn't really matter what story that idea is attached to. If anybody has that kind of thing where they think they're better than other people and they're entitled than other people, it's a turnoff. I think.
I agree. I agree with you. And it's almost like because I think that on a different day, I probably would be representing maybe a different side of this conversation, but based on the day that I kind of had today, and it's been kind of a little bit of a week for me, like I feel like I'm smack dab in the middle of the pride cycle of the Lamanites here, like, or the Nephites. And so it becomes this thing where today I'm representing like, ew, I don't want to be anywhere near my high horse or anywhere near the chosen or anywhere near having anything special about me. But there are days when I'm like, oh, I can let my light shine and really uplift people and connect people and connect, feel connected myself.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe I'm just confused. I don't know is the most powerful statement for me. And so anytime we talk about like feeling like we know something, I get nervous.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got one final clip, and this is the biggest one. There's a lot to unpack, and this is the one that's going to tie it all together so that we all know. I'm kidding.
We know.
There's no right or wrong in any of this, because as humans, we're just trying to understand the concepts of the whole vastness of reality. So dimension is not something out there. It's not a place, as all dimensions occupy the same space. And you can think of a dimension as a way of perceiving reality. It's a point of view. So in the first dimension, we see a dot. The second is a line. The third dimension, we experience reality in height, depth, and width. So if we add time and space, we have the fourth dimension. And as you raise your consciousness and perception, you can see a higher dimensional perspective and all the other dimensions below it. So I like to think of it as like viewing reality from the top of a pyramid, the apex of a pyramid. So knowing the second dimension exists within the third dimension exists within the fourth dimension exists within the fourth and the fifth. And so when we get above the fourth dimensions, we move out of measurement. We move out of time. So when you're in the fifth dimensional consciousness, you see things from a non-linear perspective. We have a more unified vision in that fifth dimensional perspective. The way we elevate to the higher dimensional perspectives is to expand our understanding as to the truth of who we are and the nature of reality. So it's understanding that we are part of the whole of creation and that we're not actually separate from source. I can still see and be aware of the third dimensional experience, but I'm not as affected by it. Sometimes it like passes through, but there's less interference. And so that's what we mean by ascending. We raise our conscious to a certain level of dimension. And how we do it is by releasing limited belief systems, thought forms, programs, templates. We're all programmed by the time we're 7. We'll talk about that probably next week. So, and it's trusting all it is. It's trusting and, meeting everything that comes at you with an open heart. It's understanding that everything is for your growth. Everything is for your ascension. Everything is for you, not to you. And then it's saying that it's also the fifth dimension's already here. So yes, we are taking our physical bodies to the fifth dimension because the fifth dimension is here. It's just a perspective. It's trusting all that is.
I love that the first thing that she said, there's no right or wrong in what we're talking about here, because we're just trying from a very limited perspective to understand the vastness of reality. And there are so many different ways that people come to this place of trusting, like that there's many paths up to the top of Mount Fuji. What's at the top of Mount Fuji here from that 5D perspective is trusting that everything is working out for the good, trusting that everything is part of the whole, dropping judgment, being compassionate, being loving, accepting everything that comes with openness, an open heart. man, I just love that. And it doesn't matter to me what stories or symbols or anything that people are using to get to that place. Like to get to that place and to be in that place is such like a beautiful, wonderful place to be after going through a dark night of the soul, that, oh man, I love anything that takes somebody there genuinely. What do you guys think?
Well, it reminds me just how you're treating your COVID diagnosis today, Glenn.
Yeah,
in a way, right?
Yeah.
I was kind of like, what am I going to learn from this? This is a teaching moment, you know?
I've had so many internal imaginary conversations with this virus inside of me.
Channel COVID here. Yeah, but I love that. And it's really hard after that dark night of the soul, especially leaving Mormonism, to trust in almost anything again, because you were taught to trust, and that trust was, you were betrayed in a way, or that trust. But it goes back to what Shelise was saying, that was a trust in something outside of you, not inside of you. And when you start really trusting that this reality that I'm creating is giving me the experiences that I need in every moment to teach me, to help me get back to myself, you know, we're all walking each other home. And yeah, I love it.
Are you in a better place for having gone through your Mormon faith crisis?
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, this came up in a conversation yesterday at lunch, is not only I feel like I'm in a better place for growing up in my Mormon faith crisis, but where I'm getting it to the point now is that I'm in a better place for growing up Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a shift for me.
Yeah.
Because for the last 8 years, I've wished that my childhood, especially like my young adulthood, was different. That I didn't go to 2 years in Brazil on a mission, that instead I went to, you know, Doug, we went to college earlier and got drunk and went to parties and, you know, and experienced life more, traveled, you know, I don't know. But I'm now getting to the point where, you know, it still comes up and I get bitter at the church here and there, but especially when Elder Holland or someone spouts off some stuff. But I'm getting to the point now where it's like, I'm grateful for Mormonism for teaching me discipline, learning a foreign language, experiencing a different culture, learning how to tap into my intuition, even if they also simultaneously taught me to mistrust my intuition. But learning that, just the experiences that I learned through Mormonism and how it's playing out in my life now too, and how it's serving me now, I'm getting to that place. And that's a cool place I feel I love being at that place where I can look back and with more gratitude than bitterness.
Nice. Welcome to
That's
5D,
great.
Mike.
Yeah, I am still very much in the 3D when it comes to Mormonism. I don't know. Like, part of me was so triggered by everything you just said, Mike. I was like, nope. There's still a lot of work that I have to do. And
There's
I thought
a river
I was,
you have to walk through, I guess.
I thought I was over it too. I guess, I don't know. I've been trying to reevaluate my past as a Mormon and think, was I actually happy or was I just delusional? Because I was such like a picture perfect Mormon. I did all the right things. I went to all the activities and I, you know, said all the right things. And I don't know, I just still carried so much guilt and shame and a lot of things that I just don't love, that I still have to work through. And maybe that's part of my soul's expansion. I'm sure it is in some way, but I'm still trying to get rid of the bitterness there. Not gonna lie.
Shelise, have you had experiences with mushrooms or on your ayahuasca experiences where you have felt like, oh, in this moment right now, I'm grateful for everything. I'm even grateful for the Mormon. I'm grateful for all that past. Have you experienced that?
No, I've actually gone back to more traumatic memories as a Mormon. Like, oh, that time with the bishop that was completely inappropriate that I forgot about.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of stuff that comes out for me. So that's how I know that there's still a lot of trauma trapped in those memories, deeply seated memories, being in the church. And I guess I don't know. And maybe I'm sure you guys have a different perspective, but when I hear the Mormon church taught me this, this, and that, I just get mad because I'm like, well, you don't have to be in a cult to learn how to respect your parents, or you don't have to be in a cult to learn how to have a moral compass. And so I think that there's so many things that, yeah, the Mormon church did teach me a few things, but I didn't have to grow up a Mormon to learn those things. Plenty of people in the world have the same values and were never in Mormonism. So that's why I still get a little bitter.
Can I double click on that a little bit with you, Shelise?
Sure.
Okay.
Double click on that. That's a good phrase.
I like that.
Yeah, that's digging back to my Bob Caswellisms in here from early infants days, double clicking. So what I'm hearing you say, Shelise, is that you have a lot of resistance. Like if somebody says, I'm grateful for the Mormon church for teaching me how to X, Y, or Z, you're like, you don't need the Mormon church. You could have learned that from any other place. You know, you could have done that, right?
You saying the words, I'm grateful to the Mormon church for, my stomach went and like just did not feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got, so any resistance to somebody expressing gratitude to the Mormon church, like gratitude, Mormon church, that's not going to fly for you. There's just like a ton of resistance there.
Yeah, I think so.
And really, it whether somebody could have learned that in another place or not is kind of irrelevant to the actual history of what happened. And so for somebody to be able to say, I went through this experience and now I'm able to look at it through a lens of gratitude instead of something else, that's still, like, for that person, maybe that's great. But for you, that still is not, it just doesn't sit well, because like Mormon church and gratitude, you cannot put those two things together.
Yeah, I don't know. That's something that I'm going to have to sit with, because I've never even thought about that until this very moment. Because I will say I'm the person that I am because of my past, and like the accumulation of experiences that led me here is why I'm this way. Everyone can say that. It's basic. Yeah. But
it's
it is basic. I'm sorry. It's basic knowledge is what I'm saying. Everyone always says, well, I wouldn't be who I was today if it weren't for my past. Well, yeah, that's kind of just how it is.
That's true. Everyone on earth can say that.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
And so you can either be grateful for that, or you can resent it, or there's like different ways that you can look at it, but it is what it is.
Right. But what I'm saying is, I think if my mission were to end up who I am today, I think there's a million different paths that could have gotten me there. I don't think that growing up Mormon was the only way to make me into a strong, independent woman who can speak her mind and, I don't know, kind of argue, but not really argue, debate with 3 grown men on a podcast. I don't know. I think that there are many different paths that could have got me there. So for me to 100% say, I am just so grateful for my past because it made me who I am, it doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
Please, I love it when you bring the heat like this. Love bring this Leo energy here.
Heat.
It's like everything you're saying is absolutely true and legit. Like
it's totally true.
It is. And here's the kicker, Shelise. I'm loving this conversation. And without the exact algorithm of all 4 of us growing up in the Mormon church, this fucking thing wouldn't be happening right now. So, girl, I'm thankful for what led me to today.
There you go. There's Doug standing on top of the 5D pyramid looking down.
Okay. Here's something. I am grateful that I grew up in a cult only if for the reason that I could meet you 3 and talk about our horrific pasts.
Same. And I'm happy to talk about a horrific past. Like what happened when Kimber, that last clip, when Kimber was talking about the 1D the 1Ds within the 2D, within the 3D, within the 4D. And then with what Mike just said and what Shelise just said, and Glenn, your double click on that. I am sitting here thinking about a thing that Shelise taught me, which is I spend too much time thinking with my brain and too much time trying to figure shit out and trying to like find the angles and find the like cute little things that can try to make me sound intelligent or funny or whatever. And Shelise taught me to like slow things down a little bit and listen to my heart and think with my heart a little bit.
Yeah.
Because honestly, my whole life I've thought with two organs, my brain and my dick. And I've started learning from Shelise that if I can get into a space where I can think with my heart, that means a lot to me. Like it lets me slow things down a little bit, and it helps me understand simultaneously what Mike just said and what Shelise just said, which were at odds with each other, totally at odds with one another. Mike said, I'm grateful for my Mormon background.
Now you've fallen off of the pyramid and you're back down at 3D, because when you're on top, you see that they're no odds. They're just like different parts of the same whole.
Well, yeah, well said. Well said. But what you said, Glenn, reminded me of Ram Dass. If you can drop down into your soul, the soul loves everything.
Oh yeah.
That is such a hard concept for me, because it's like, wait, really?
Yeah.
Loves everything?
Yes.
And I have to go down into my heart and see if I can contact my soul and see if I can pull it back, pull it up, whatever we want to say about this 5D or 12D or whatever. Like, I want to see if I can love everything. Can I simultaneously love not being Mormon and having been Mormon?
Yeah.
Can I simultaneously love Donald Trump and Joe Biden? Like, can I
Right.
And you, Glenn, you said it so well. I wish I could quote you back, but you said almost the exact thing that Ram Dass said, which is, in your soul is understanding. And that understanding is love. Love for yourself, love for your friends, love for your enemies, love for the things that you don't understand.
Yeah. Love your
and I'm experiencing that right now while the three of you are arguing about whether or not we should have been Mormon.
I didn't feel like there was an argument.
Oh no, arguing is the wrong word, but debating or discussing or pontificating, whatever the hell we want to say.
So I'm going to get Dune and I'm going to listen to Dune, and I've got a book for you. Okay. Thanks. It's called Heart Minded by Sarah Blondin. It is. I
got to pull up my little
awesome. Like if you haven't discovered Sarah Blondin yet, she's got a podcast called Live Awake that is just absolutely gorgeous, beautiful sentiment. I love her, everything that she does. And so this book, Heart Minded, is so powerful. And so like if you feel, I mean, my first reaction when you said you're thinking too much with your mind was, no, you're not. You're thinking just the right amount. be patient with yourself. You're doing it great. But I heard this desire for you, like you're really grateful for Shelise for teaching you more to feel into things with your heart and kind of drop that kind of male energy of I've got to dissect everything. I've got to understand it and, be witty and intelligent and, like all of that stuff and becoming more heart minded, the mind meet the heart. Sarah Blondin just slays it. She does such a great job with it. So I can't recommend that more.
What's her last name? Sarah what?
Blondin, Blondin.
Yeah. I'll check
How to Hold
out.
Yourself and Others in Love. Is that one?
Heart Minded, How to Hold Yourself and Others in Love. Maybe that's the subtitle to it. Yeah. Yeah.
Done, dude.
Great.
I got some of those same credits you were talking about on Audible.
Good. Good. Right on. Well, thanks for jumping on today, guys.
Great.
I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And
this has been great.
Yeah. And so how long is this class, Kimber? It's 7 weeks or is it 8? I think it's 7. Yeah. So I don't think we have to do this after every week, but it'd be nice to do it a couple more times and
I'm down.
Share some of this information, because to me, it, like you summed it up perfectly, Doug, wanting to love everything. Like, how do you do that? How do you do that Ram Dass stuff? And one of my most powerful altered consciousness experiences was with it was an ayahuasca ceremony that the last day was San Pedro. And so while I was on San Pedro, I had the intention, I want to know if this is possible, if God, whatever that is, if there is a God, is able to look at everything with love and compassion and not judgment, what would that be like? And for about 12 hours, I was there, and it was amazing. Like being able to like really feel that and go like, oh, I understand it. And like all of these other people that were in the group with me, like some of them, it's really funny because the night before I had this intention going into the ayahuasca ceremony. And the night before I was being so judgmental of people. Like, I'm like, I don't like the way that person said that thing. I don't like what she's doing with the guitar. I don't like, what, and then I'm like, and I don't like that. I don't like it. What am I doing? I came here because I wanted to get rid of this stuff. And then the next day, having that experience, it's like all of that set it up so that I could have that experience, know what it's like to not feel those things, and I can't even use the word forgiveness because there wasn't anything to forgive. It was just for me to drop those stories that I was telling, like whatever resistance I had inside of myself, whatever insecurities I had in myself that were then I was projecting onto other people and going, okay, I'm just going to accept this. And man, that was a magical day. It was about 2 years ago. It was fantastic.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Aho, amen.
Aho.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Cool. This was great, Glenn. Thank you so much. I'm so happy I got to join tonight. This is fantastic.
Like, I'm so glad you joined too. I think it was great energy with all of us here.
All right. Thanks, guys.
I love you guys.
Later. Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Put down the weapons that you use against yourself. You don't need them anymore.
Hey there, thanks for listening all the way to the end. Now, I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I have more to say about this topic, and I'm going to do that with a follow-up behind-the-scenes sharing time episode on Patreon. So, if you're in a position where you can throw me a few dollars each month to support the work that I put into creating this podcast, please come and support me on Patreon, where you'll also get access to additional content. Did you know that I also create sharing time episodes that are available only to Patreon subscribers? I've been doing that for a few years, so there's a lot of content there that you can have access to. So please come and support this podcast if you can. I greatly appreciate it.
Hi, this is Hillary.
Matthew, Ryan,
Carol,
Keith,
Ashley, and I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did. Anyone for the closing prayer?
My worst crime is an inside job. Dark thoughts taking over like an inside mob. I tune into the scene between the eyes and take a breath.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.
I sit still and watch the thoughts float past me. Never mind the future, never mind what the past be. I like to jump and let the universe catch me. 3, 4, watch the beauty blow past me. I keep my pockets light, destination in sight. Keep my actions elevated to compassionate heights. I'm walking past the fight, laying down on Sunday night. Choosing love when I pick up this mic. So we can make love, not war.
From a third dimensional perspective, there is a virus. People are dying. We need to do all we can to protect ourselves and everyone else. It's very root chakra. It's fear-based. It's the collective scrambling to stay exactly where they are and being very attached to this reality. And that's okay, because that's the third dimensional perspective. And we all have part of that perspective inside of our bodies because we're transmuting some of that trauma from other lifetimes and transmuting things that have happened in other timelines to us. And that's why some people are more afraid than other people are afraid. When we move to the fourth dimensional perspective, which is time and space, it's a very unstable realm. But that's where the fourth dimensional perspective is where the darkness starts to come to light. So the fourth dimensional perspective is chaotic. It's the conspiracy theories. It's the they are doing something to us. It's this is going to happen. We're moving into the brave new world. We're moving into 1984. It's still fear-based. It's still like all this other polarity, but it's becoming more where you can see a little bit more of reality. It's where we start seeing the shadows that, oh my God, all is not as it seems. So then when we move into the fifth dimensional perspective, we're while aware of all the other perspectives, we see all of this as a cosmic play. This whole storyline, this play that we're playing out, is to help awaken humanity and reach to the light. It's from this perspective, we understand the unity of all things. And we know that death is an illusion, that this experience on this earth is temporary. It's not the entirety of who we are. It's, knowing that we're ascending. It's knowing that we all are cosmic consciousness, that you're cosmic consciousness, you're cosmic consciousness, I'm cosmic consciousness. Looking at these perspectives. And from this perspective, there's no right, there's no wrong. That's being multidimensional. So that's why I'm always adamant. If any of you follow me on social media, I keep saying, don't get caught in polarity traps. So claim yourself as a divine sovereign being, to stay in your light and connect to your true self, connect to your truth, connect to your wisdom, your knowing, your trust, and understanding, as cosmic consciousness, with that third dimensional perspective that we see playing out, everyone's playing a divine role. This is so polarizing right now, and what I see is it's so polarizing. Everything's trying to pull us to the opposite ends, that it's actually going to bring us back together, because it's going to get so ridiculous that we're just like, oh my God, I can't. There's got to be more truth than what's happening. Literally come back to the heart, come back to that divine neutrality, and see everything for the truth of what it is.